Zelensky has stated that he intends to meet with the leader of China Xi Jinping in order to discuss the suggestions that Beijing has regarding the conclusion of the conflict in Ukraine on the first anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. He said that the proposal indicated that China. He made these remarks during he said, "I really want to believe that China will not furnish weapons to Russia. I really want to believe that." He said the strategy put forth by China encourages both peaceful dialogue and the honoring of national sovereignty. However, the 12-point document does not directly state that Russia must withdraw its forces from Ukraine, and it also condemns the use of unilateral sanctions, which is seen as avid criticism of Ukraine's allies in the West. In spite of Mr. Zelensky's repeated requests for a meeting with the Chinese authorities have not yet given a formal. The government of China is currently contemplating sending weapons to Moscow. In the meantime, Moscow praised the peace proposals made by China. The Foreign Ministry in Moscow issued a statement in which it said, "We share the viewpoints of Beijing." The United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, stated earlier this week that Beijing was contemplating supplying weapons and ammunition to, has categorically denied this claim, which was made by Blinken on Friday. Reports surfaced in the American media claiming once again that the Chinese government was contemplating shipping drones and artillery shells to Russia. When U.S. President Joe Biden was asked about the Chinese proposal on Friday, he responded by saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin's applauding it. So how could it be any? I've seen nothing in the plan that would indicate that there is something that would be beneficial to anyone other than Russia. He continued, "I've seen nothing in the plan." According to John Simpson, the BBC's World Affairs editor, China seems to be taking the side of Russia despite the fact that it would like to find a way to save President Putin by negotiating some kind of peace agreement that would spare his dignity. The Chinese proposals came about as a result of a trip that China's top diplomat Wang took to Moscow on Wednesday. While there, he conferred with President Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Following the discussions, Mr. Wang was reported by the state-run news agency of China Xinhua as saying that Beijing was willing to deepen political confidence and strengthen strategic coordination with Moscow. China has not earned the confidence of NATO. A lukewarm reception was given by Western officials to the most recent suggestion. The head of NATO Jens Stoltenberg stated that Beijing does not have much credibility due to the fact that it had not been able to denounce the illegal invasion on February 24, 2022. President Putin gave the order for the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and Russian troops made substantial advances during the first few days in Ukraine's northeast and south. However, the assault on the capital city of Kiev was quickly repelled, and the Ukrainian military was subsequently able to reclaim a significant portion of the territory. Since then, the conflict has evolved into a drawn-out and bloody battle of attrition, making it the most significant military conflict to take place in Europe since World War II. Zelensky said, "What I saw was horrifying." During a lengthy press conference that took place on Friday in Kiev, Mr. Zelensky stated that victory will undoubtedly await us if allies respect their promises and deadline. Poland has reportedly already provided Ukraine with 4 German-made Leopard 2 tanks and is prepared to provide additional tanks in the future. It has been announced that Germany will supply 14 Leopard tanks, and Spain and Canada will also be shipping tanks. The United States of America, which is by far the largest provider of military assistance to Ukraine, has promised to deliver 31 of its M1 Abrams. And the United Kingdom is providing 14 Challenger 2 tanks after many countries on Africa and Latin America abstained during a vote on a resolution condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine at the United Nations General Assembly. The leader of Ukraine stated that his country had failed to engage appropriately with the countries of those continents, according to what he had to say. "We didn't work well for many years. We didn't pay attention. And I believe that is a huge." When Mr. Zelensky was asked to identify the moment in the war that he considers to be the worst so far, he said that it occurred in Bucha, which is a town located outside of Kiev. During the early stages of the conflict, Russian troops are accused of killing civilians in Bucha. The Ukrainian forces won the battle to retake the small town in April of last year, after it had been under Russian authority since April of the previous. "What I saw, it was terrible," Mr. Zelensky said, displaying obvious emotion. The attempted Russian coup in Moldova was prevented as a way to commemorate the passage of 1 year since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The United States has announced a fresh round of penalties aimed at Russia, as well as additional assistance for Ukraine. The most recent set of restrictions targets more than 100 entities, both in Russia and around the globe, including banks and vendors of military hardware. The United States has stated that it intends to bring to justice those individuals who assist Russia in taking advantage of legal vulnerabilities in order to acquire materials that are subject to sanction. The most recent round of financial assistance provided to Ukraine by the White House is valued at a total of £12 billion, £10 billion. This figure is comprised of a contribution of $2 billion from the Department of Defense, which includes funding for ammunition and drones, and a contribution of $10 billion from the State Department, which includes funding for budgetary support to the Ukrainian 𝐔𝐀𝐕s. In order to improve the electricity infrastructure in Ukraine and the neighboring country of Moldova, an additional $550 million will be provided. The conflict has had a significant toll on Moldova's already low standard of living, making it the poorest country in Europe. It has been several weeks since its officials first voiced their concerns regarding Russia's alleged plans to seize. It comes just a few days after President Joe Biden made an unannounced trip to Kiev where he met with Mr. Zelensky and conducted discussions with him. In addition, the European Union (EU) voted on Friday to support its 10th round of sanctions against Russia, which include placing restrictions on technology that has both civilian and military applications. Peace statement from Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has stated that it welcomes China's suggestions for resolving the conflict in Ukraine, and has emphasized that it is open to the idea of achieving its goals through political and diplomatic means. These statements were made in response to a statement made by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Maria Zakar, a spokesperson for the ministry, was quoted as saying, "We appreciate the sincere desire of our Chinese friends to contribute to the peaceful resolution of the conflict in Ukraine. We share Beijing's viewpoints." Zakar emphasized that this would also mean acknowledging new regional realities in. She stated that Russia's invasion, which it refers to as a special military operation, is open to the possibility of accomplishing its goals through political and diplomatic means. The statements made by the spokesperson referred to Moscow's determination on recognizing the unilateral annexation of Ukraine's 4 regions, Dan, Luhansk, Khan, and Zaporizhzhia and Crimea. Additionally, Crimea was also mentioned. 12-item document from China. On the occasion of the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China has demanded an all-out cessation of hostilities as a component of a proposed resolution. In the 12-point document that was published by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it has stated that the sanctions that the West has placed against Russia ought to be lifted, that the use of nuclear weapons ought to be avoided, that humanitarian aid corridors ought to be established for civilians, and that the grain corridor ought to be kept open. Ukraine has stated that it will not accept China's proposal unless it requires Russia to withdraw its forces to the borders that were in place in 1991 following the dissolution of the Soviet Union. However, Ukraine has stated that it is open to considering certain aspects of the plan. On the other hand, Western allies like Kyiv are not very receptive to China's proposals and claim that Beijing is not very reliable as a mediator. Due to its close relations with Russia, conflict is at England's doorstep. Ben Wallace, the Defense Secretary of the United Kingdom, recently issued a warning that a conflict is imminent and that his country must be ready for. In an interview with The Sun, on the first anniversary of the conflict in Ukraine, a British minister expressed concern that the world has become unquestionably a more dangerous, more unstable, and more insecure place, and he made a chilling prediction regarding the future. Ben Wallace is quoted as having said, "Battle is coming no matter the temperature. We have to be prepared for. We must increase the amount of money we expend on defense. It's just something that we have to come to terms with. In order to be a deterrent, you need to be prepared, equipped, and on the side of your friends. Independence is not free following the shipment of millions of pounds worth of equipment and ammunition to Ukraine." The statements made by the British minister reverberated throughout the numerous articles published in British publications drew readers' attention to the escalating conflict between the West and Russia. Liberty is not free, Wallace maintained, urging Britain to be prepared for whatever might take place in the future. Wallace also refuted reports that Britain was planning to deploy Typhoon fighter aircraft too. While the Labour Party has announced that it will support the government regardless of the decision taken regarding warplanes, The Guardian newspaper reported that the Minister of Defense stated that his country does not intend to send RAF Typhoon jets to Ukraine. This news was reported by The Guardian newspaper. Britain's message to Russia is that we never give up and we are not going anywhere, a British official said in an interview with the newspaper, The Wallace Sun. The official was underscoring that the country will continue its support for Ukraine. Will the United States deploy fighter aircraft to the Ukraine? In commemoration of the one-year anniversary of the start of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, President Joe Biden of the United States granted an interview to ABC. F-16 fighter jets, which Ukraine has asked for in preparation for an assault by Russia in the spring, will not be provided for the time being, as Biden explained in response to the question posed by journalist David Neer. "You don't believe Ukraine needs F-16 seconds, do you?" "I will answer no." Biden responded, "No, it doesn't need F-16 seconds." In response to a follow-up question about whether this indicates that the United States will never provide the Ukraine with an F-16, President Joe Biden stated, "We do not know precisely what the Ukrainian defense will need in the future. At this time, there is no justification in the opinion of our armed forces for dispatching F-16 seconds. This is not acceptable to me." Right. What our military believes Ukraine requires, we are shipping over there. To them, it requires armored fighting vehicles, artillery, and air defense mechanisms, among which is the HIMARS missile launcher system. We are sending them to Ukraine so that the country can be in a position to earn a profit from them. There is an inferno to the east of Ukraine. Bakhmut, which is found in the Donbas region in the east of the country, has been the epicenter of the most intense fighting in Ukraine for some time now. The battle in the city is being described as hell alive by the Ukrainian leadership. But the drones are proving to be the most helpful weapon for the Ukrainian forces. Russia does not put an end to the artillery bombard. The situation in eastern Ukraine is the most volatile at the moment. The artillery bombardment coming from Russian forces has not stopped at any point. On the other side, the Ukraine uses a drone system known as Daniro-1 to detect artillery units deployed by Russia. Therefore, the Ukraine has the ability to set Russian strongholds of blah. The pilot of the drone Rustin stated that the work environment was extremely hazardous, particularly in the forest. There is continuous activity taking place in the containers. There are artillery troops coming from a number of different directions, including the north and the east. The wounded Russian commander was managed to crawl. It appears that Russian artillery is trying to conceal itself by moving into the thickly wooded region. Tanks belonging to the Russian army are also starting fire on Ukrainian positions. In order to provide protection for the Russian military in the autumn of 2016, Ukrainian forces retook control of many of the region's settlements. The conflict has left its victims with wounds that are not yet in this area. Those who are still living are either extremely low income or very elderly. Those who remained in the neighborhood have expressed their belief that they were powerless to do otherwise. The Ukrainian military was able to bring down the Russian battleship as seen in a video that was taken in the nearby village of Olir. The footage shows Russian soldiers fleeing the area while their wounded commander makes an attempt to crawl to a secure location. Drones are absolutely necessary in this area. Absolute necessity for locating and engaging the Russian troops within 20 minutes. The crew operating the drone is also able to prepare ammunition for the drone. Although it does not appear that the conflict will end anytime soon, drones continue to exert a significant amount of control over it. Next, big intel. Exploding enemy military bases and ammunition depots is one of the most essential things that can be done to advance an army's position during a war because of the fact that this will result in the adversary suffering a loss of both military personnel and ammunition. The Russian army, which is presently experiencing problems with military personnel and ammunition, continues to lose its military bases and ammunition depots. In Mariupol, the Air Force of the military forces of Ukraine carried out a mission that would go down in history. An explosion destroyed both the Russian invaders' ammunition depot and their military headquarters. There was a string of 12 explosions that occurred in Mariupol. Russian planes took. In the city of Mariupol, where the fighting is still going on, there were reports of aircraft noises last night. These aircraft were part of the attacking Russian army's air force. The Ukrainian military, which was on high alert day and night in order to protect its territory, was the first to notice the planes taking off in the late hours of. On the other hand, the aircraft did not lift off in order to launch an assault on the city of Mariupol because the Ukrainian Air Force, which took action as soon as the plane took off, was unable to identify any aircraft to hunt in the skies over Mariupol. They were unable to locate the plane's pursuer. Nevertheless, the Air Force was able to identify a much more significant. It was the military station and ammunition depot from which the invaders took off. That turned out to be the location that was found. A flight at a late hour during the night could have caused the Russian attackers a lot of harm. Major setback for the Russian military. The Ukrainian Air Force made a discovery of an ammunition storage facility close to the Mariupol air. In addition, on that same night, a military base and the Ij steel and iron factory, which had been momentarily used by the invaders, were both attacked. The invaders' ammunition depot was the first target of the Air Force's missile and artillery weapons, which they used to destroy it because there was ammunition stored in the warehouse. Both the fire and the explosions grew much. In the strategic harbor city of Mariupol, the Russian military was unable to protect one of its most vital ammunition storage facilities. The armed forces of Ukraine are continually improving. The conflict in Ukraine is similar to a game of chess. Both teams play the moves they believe will win them the game, but certain movements can alter. After making significant headway in the early months of the conflict, the Russian army is now unable to accomplish significant victories. The Ukrainian army has overcome the initial shock of the war and is now, with the assistance of the Allied states, having tremendous success fighting against the Russian army. According to the statements made about a month ago, Russia is currently in Ukraine. It has suffered losses totaling 3,363 tanks, 6,660 armored vehicles, 2,363 artillery systems, 453 multiple rocket launchers, 221 air defense systems, 293 warplanes, 284 helicopters, 233 tactical UAVs, 18 ships, and 199 other pieces of specialized military equipment captured, Russian soldiers told them. Confessions made by soldiers who have been captured or who have surrendered are a significant element that can change the overall direction of a conflict. Confessions expose the enemy's battle plans, as well as the truths they are trying to cover up. Since the beginning of the conflict, the Ukrainian army has been able to successfully capture thousands of Russian attackers through various operatives. On the other hand, thousands of soldiers who were unwilling to battle turned themselves into the Ukrainian army. The confessions made by each individual combatant exposed the Russian invaders for who they really were. The statements made by 2 Russian soldiers who were kidnapped by the Ukrainian army in recent days were like a bomb that was dropped on the agenda. Let's discuss the confessions made by the Russian soldiers that were kidnapped. The Wagner Group's mercenaries were recently captured by the Ukrainian military, and the news of their captivity was just recently made public. These soldiers had been incarcerated at one time, but at Pruin's suggestion, they were transferred to the front lines of the conflict and released from their confinement. Confessions made by the soldiers who had been captured disclosed how the prisoners had been tricked into being sent to the front lines and fighting. It was explained to the Russian prisoners that if they consented to fight for a period of 6 months, their previous records would be expunged and they would receive a monthly stipend of $2,200. On the other hand, the prisoners who had taken part in the battle found themselves in an entirely different circumstance. Because the Russian military used captured enemies as cannon fodder in the most intense battles and on the most dangerous front lines, many people lost their lives. In addition to this, the condemned soldiers were led to believe that they were engaged in combat against the West and not the Ukraine. The issue with Putin's unexpected health problem may force you to reconsider or postpone all of your decisions. In these cases, you have the option. It is possible for a regular individual to behave in this manner. But what should be done in the event that the leader of a state is afflicted with a serious illness in democratic society? A variety of solutions are available. It is possible for the vice president to exercise his authority and make important judgments. In addition, in democratic state structures, the operation of each organization can be reliably anticipated. Even if the person at the helm of state abruptly passes away, these nations will not experience a crisis in management. However, the health of the leader of state continues to be a significant factor, because concerns about one's health can cloud judgment. People who discover, for instance, that they have a relatively limited amount of time left to live are prone to making very irresponsible choices. Alternatively, individuals who are suffering from severe psychological depression are known to have very unusual decision-making processes. However, the condition associated with brain illnesses poses the greatest. People who have issues with their memory or other brain processes are more likely to forget the choices they have made. Because of this, they might end up making a lot of decisions that are in direct opposition to one another. One more danger is having trouble keeping your temper in check when it comes to decision-making. Those who struggle with neurological conditions or anger issues might not take the repercussions into consideration. Is Russia a democratic country? Democratic administrations offer a remedy for this potential. Ongoing health checks are performed on the president, and the findings of these checks are reported publicly. Whenever possible, if an unusual problem develops, then it is expected that the president will resign from their position. Regrettably, not all states' governments operate according to democratic principles. Russia is one of those. The difficulties that Vladimir Putin is experiencing with his health in Russia have an impact on the safety and tranquility of the entire globe. There are a number of rumors circulating that Putin's health problems are growing worse. However, in light of the most recent developments, it became clear that the situation had already reached a catastrophic stage because of the action taken by President Joseph Biden of the United States. This matter is now even further up on the agenda. An extraordinary turn of events took place right as the first year of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine was about to come to a close. During his journey to Ukraine, President Joe Biden had a meeting with Zelensky. During this unexpected meeting, President Biden traveled to many parts of the country that have been impacted by the fact that Biden was able to make himself so at home in Kiev, despite the many challenges he faced there. Putin's hidden illness. Biden is reportedly at ease due to the fact that he is aware that Putin will pass away in the near future. There have been many assertions made about the health of the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, but they have all been disproved. The British press reports that Putin suffers from Parkinson's disease and cancer. In the end, the British press disseminated emails regarding Putin's sickness and asserted that the Russian leader was suffering from Parkinson's disease and cancer. Emails were distributed by The Sun that were purportedly from another publication. These are the personal mails of two prominent executives in the Russian 𝐔𝐀𝐕s. Administrators are communicating with each other via email, and they are saying that Putin has Parkinson's disease and cancer. Biden is aware that Putin has a very limited amount of time remaining. This is the primary reason why Biden does not consider Putin to be a danger. A Ukrainian banner can be seen flying in Crimea. In the portion of Crimea that is currently under Russian administration, the settlement of 𝐔𝐀𝐕s has hoisted the Ukrainian flag. The resistance movement in Crimea is still fighting against Russia's annexation of the region. According to a report made by the Crimean Partisans Telegram group, the Ukrainian flag was seen fluttering in the occupied territory of, according to the phrase, is currently subject to provisional occupation. There were also sentiments such as "Long Live Ukraine" included in the image that was provided. The flag of Ukraine can be seen flying high above the Count Pierre in an AMA square and a higher. How many ballistic missiles has Russia launched at? Every day for the past year, Russian occupation, troops on land, sea, and in the air have been bombing Ukrainian territory. The quantity of missiles that Russia has fired at Ukraine over the course of a year was revealed by the Ukrainian General Staff. According to a statement released by the deputy head of the main operations department of the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Brigadier General 𝐔𝐀𝐕s, since the beginning of the large-scale invasion attempt, the Russian occupation forces have carried out approximately 5,000 missile attacks on the territory of Ukraine and have bombed them with planes approximately 3,500 times. He claimed that Russia was responsible for approximately 100 seconds of operations carried out against Ukraine. Over the course of the previous year, anti-ship missiles are used to launch attacks on civilian communities by Russia. The Russian military has a limited number of high-precision missiles, according to the Brigadier General, who stated that this is the reason why the Russian army uses air-launched Kh-22 anti-ship cruise missiles, also known as the aircraft carrier killer, to destroy the homes of Ukrainian citizens. However, Grof reported that the Ukrainian army was successful in destroying 6 Russian airplanes, 2 helicopters, 80 cruise missiles, and 84 SHS in the month of February. Leopard tanks are currently present in Ukraine. The Leopard main battle tanks that were shipped to Ukraine from Poland were put through their paces by the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, Alexei Reznikov pointed out how effective the tanks were by asking where is the route to Moscow. While Germany has announced that it will increase the total number of tanks it will send to Kiev, Poland has announced that it has begun sending the main combat tanks of the German-made Leopard to a 6 type that it has committed to sending. The transfer of 4 Leopard tanks to the Ukraine was recently confirmed by the Prime Minister of Poland. Matmo, Germany, which has promised to send 14 Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, has also confirmed that it will send 18 of these tanks, which is an increase of 4 from the previous commitment. In addition, Sweden is getting ready to deliver 10 Leopard tanks to Ukraine, the most penis-headed person of them. In the United Kingdom, there is now a statue that depicts the cranium of Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, in the form of a penis. The inscription "Penis Head of the Year" can be seen on the monument that was unveiled on December 15. In the community of Bellin, located in the county of Worcestershire, alongside the statue, there is a stand that has been put up and on. It is a box of eggs that people can throw. The villagers' attention was drawn to the statue as well, which had been erected by a group that claimed they were demonstrating against the war but did not disclose its identity. According to one of the activists, a large number of individuals threw eggs at the statue. Another demonstrator said this year there was only one individual who consistently acted like a penis head, and that person was put. The group has mentioned that they want to create the statues for the structure and then market them. The activists have announced that they will give all of the money that they make from this endeavor to charitable organizations that assist migrants from Ukraine. The leader of the group who organized the trip said, "I saw the devastation in Ukraine and many people displaced by." The monument of Putin in Kiev has been taken down in the month of August. A monument of Vladimir Putin in the form of a red statue seated on top of a tank was constructed in Central Park, which is located in New York City, in the United States. James 𝐔𝐀𝐕s, a French artist who designed the sculpture that is located in the area where children play, has stated that his goal was to bring attention to the absurdity of conflict. The disagreement was also stoked by a statue of Putin that was erected in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. In the month of May, a figure that was meant to resemble Vladimir Putin was portrayed in the sculpture titled, "Shoot Yourself," holding a pistol to his own. After about 8 hours, the statue was taken down despite the fact that it had been placed there without the authorization of the authorities and that its construction had taken nearly a month. The heated conflict continues. Moscow has been battling for several months to take Bakhmut. And while the conflict has brought to light tensions between the Wagner paramilitary group and the Russian military, the Kremlin has denied that there is any kind of dispute between the two groups. The besieged city has evolved into a significant political and symbolic prize, and the conflict over who will control it has become the most drawn-out conflict of Russia's onslaught, which has lasted for an entire Analysts believe that seizing Bakhmut would primarily serve as a symbolic victory for Moscow, despite the fact that doing so would represent a significant victory for the Russian capital. Over the past day and a half, drones operated by the Ukrainian military have been attacking Russian fortifications in the area surrounding the city of Bakhmut. During the assault, 165 Russian fighters were killed in. In addition to this, Russian soldiers who were entering the city of Bakhmut were detained on the bridge. The Russian servicemen were not rescued by snipers from the Ukrainian side of the trench. The Russian warriors, upon coming to the conclusion that they could not move forward, retreated. An assault on the Russian strongholds was carried out by the Ukrainian Marine Corps in the city of Dan. After shifting from a defensive to an aggressive stance, the Marines were successful in seizing Russian positions all around the city. Over the course of the past week, Ukraine has maneuvered into a position where it can now launch an assault. The Ukrainian military achieved a substantial amount of success by attacking the regions where the Russian army was located across all fronts where the conflict was taking place.